There we go. Okay. And so this is where we left off really last week, right? Last Thursday. Because Friday I just kind of did some review stuff, and we'll do some review stuff tomorrow because we're distance learning. Obviously, this Thursday and Friday are normal days, but we're kind of at that point where we've started to build this up, right? And we've got our modifiers on. If we go to the blue wrench, we can see mirror modifiers on, clippings on. We kind of made sure to turn the little triangle on. We do have subdivisional surface, but remember, that's because we're really going to eventually apply this subdivision surface modifier, right? So that it actually will look like this for real low res, right? We saw when we did a lot of stuff for our room, we didn't worry about this, right? Because we were doing low res stuff that we want to be boxy, and we're using bevel to give us the rounded corners we need them. But when you're building something like a car or a spaceship or a character or a creature, subdivision surface modifier, if you use it well, can be a useful shortcut, right? You notice how we're not trying to add in a million edge loops, right? We kept kind of our wheel well simpler, and we're letting the actual subdivision surface modifier round off the shape for us. Remember, if we turn the triangle off, we see that that's actually what it looks like without the subdivision surface modifier, right? That's what it actually looks like without it, right? So this really is just subdividing each quad into 4 smaller quads, but it's also rounding the shape off as you go. But it's virtual, right? It's not applied. We're still using the simpler version of the mesh to shape it. And that's the idea, is we're letting this add a lot of the edge loops that we'd want to add manually. And so basically it saves us time, right, by doing it this way. But we do want to keep it simpler, right? We don't want to try to get every little detail at this stage. We're really focusing more on the blocking in of the primary shapes and forms. So this is a great shortcut if you use it well. A lot of you guys remember this from last year and even earlier this year. If you're going to use a subdivision surface modifier, you better apply it, right? You don't want your low res to look like this while you're shaping at high res. Because some people are just scared to even use it. They'll just work straight low res and add every edge with my hand. That's not wrong, but it does take longer, right? But you don't want to willy-nilly just model in sub-Ds and then not subdivide it later on, right? We're basically using this to allow us to get the rounded shape for our low res, right? You always want your lowest resolution of the mesh, the one without any modifiers on it, to look good, right? So we're really just using this as a shortcut. We know we're going to subdivide it. So that's always my biggest rule about a subdivision surface modifier is if you apply it and you're working in it, you better apply it later on. It better be actually finalized to the mesh so it'll look good for this. But also, if you keep it simpler and don't try to add in a million edge loops, you're still going to end up with a really efficient, quite efficient model. So you don't have to be scared of subdivision surface modifiers, but you do want a couple of good rules for working with. My 2 biggest ones are, if you're going to work with it, apply it, because you want your low res to look like this. And keep it simple, right? Keep it simple. So that you're using it within reason, right? You don't have to be super, super simple, but you do want to kind of have enough to give you the primary shapes you want, but not so much that it'll be really dense later on, right? So some good rules for working with a subdivision surface modifier. It's not appropriate for all models, right? If you're working on buildings or furniture, stuff like that, you usually won't use that, and that's why we didn't really use it that much on our room. But when you're doing characters, creatures, cars, kind of cool. So it's a bit of a side note there, but it's great to have that stuff in a lecture, but also in a video, right? Because I just want to make sure you guys know we're not just applying the subdivision surface modifier willy-nilly, right? We are going to apply both of these later on. So really, at this point, we're just kind of doing the further stuff we were doing the other day. It's just more extruding and bridging of border edges, right? So right here, and we're eventually going to start to break this car up into parts, right? Like our door should be separate, our hood should be separate. But right now, we want them to be kind of seamless so that they line up seamlessly when we break them up later on, right? So right now, we do want this to be all one big piece that's solid. So that way, later on, when we break things up, we start to separate these parts off, they'll line up well. Otherwise, you have to do a lot of manual lining up, snapping, and that is just, once again, not wrong, but time-consuming. I've seen so many modelers that because they are stuck working the way they did 15, 20 years ago, which is not a problem for you guys, right? You weren't even alive 15, 20 years ago. Well, some of you guys were alive 15 years ago, but 20 years ago, no. That's how long I've been doing this. I've been doing this longer than all of you guys were alive. So basically, if you have some good rules for working with these things and some good methods, you can save yourself time and effort. And that's the techniques I'm teaching you guys. So I want to extend this a little more because I want to start to kind of connect up the hood to here, right? So remember, we or 2 for edge mode, right? So we go 2 for edge mode. We select this edge right here. And we're going to say Control E, right? Remember, E is for rotate, but Control E is for your extrude tool, right? And remember, if you're in the modeling menu, here's your extrude tool. There are actually a couple of different extrusion tools, right? Any tool you see in Blender that's got a little triangle next to it, if you hold down your left mouse button on it, you'll see there's extrude region, which is our default one. There's extrude manifold, which I don't use that much, but it's kind of cool. I did show you guys a little bit on our room last term. It works a lot like SketchUp. Which if you're doing some architectural stuff you might like if you're building a building or a room or a house with lots of little kind of, it can kind of be cool. But it's up to you. You don't need it to build good buildings. You can extrude along normals, extrude along individual, even extrude along cursor, right? So there's actually some cool extrude tools there. Usually I just like the default one, and that's what I use most of the time. Remember, you can either click on the yellow, which will extrude along averaged normal direction. Remember, normal direction is really just the direction a polygon or an edge is kind of pointing, right? So like for faces, the normal directions for these faces are pointing upwards. The normal direction for these polygons are pointing out this way. The polygons right here are pointing that direction, right? And basically, edges can have their own normal directions. So this actually does average normal direction. The outer one does view extrude, but that's also really just your middle mouse button. So if you just hit middle mouse button, it does your view extrude for you, right? So I just kind of do a little bit of an extrusion out there just to kind of get that one right there. Now remember, I have some quick keys for my tweak tool, right? Right up at the very top here, remember Q toggles you through your 4 different selection tools, right? Box select, which is just drag a box. It selects whatever it touches. Although it doesn't grab things on the other side, you'll want to hit Alt-X for X-ray to kind of get the other side of polygons. If you hit Q, it takes you to drag select, right? Or circle select, as Blender calls it, but it's basically drag select, where you just move your cursor and it selects stuff. Of course, there's lasso, which is works like box, but it's a lasso. And then, of course, there's tweak. And if you hold down left mouse button, you'll see that, once again, holding down left mouse button on the tool gives you the options. Remember, I did assign my circle and my tweak to mouse buttons, right? So if you have a mouse that's got more than 3 mouse buttons, right, like the ones on the sides, you can apply those really easily in Blender as well. So I'm using the tweak tool because I like the tweak tool. So I can kind of bring this up a little bit, kind of out there. Maybe bring that one down a little bit. Remember, tweak tool just allows you to kind of select and move at the same time, right? And it's great because it is actually a selection tool as well. So you can just leave it on a lot. I do. And still use it as a normal selection tool. Now remember, Shift adds selections. So I can hold down Shift to select that edge, and you see how there's 2 edges across from each other. Remember, when you're bridging stuff, they should be not on the same loop, right? They should be different parts of the mesh. That's the whole point of bridge, is you want to create a polygon between this edge and this edge. Now Blender, of course, can do it to more edges, so if I want to do 2 to 2, I could. You could even do 3 to 2. So say, unlike Maya, which really only wants to ever do the same number to the same number, Blender can actually do different numbers to different numbers. It usually will create it all triangulated, so, you know, buyer beware a little bit, but it can do that. In this case, I just wanted to connect these 2 up. So remember, if you right-click, right, because you'll notice here you don't really see the bridge tool here, right? There's a lot of tools here. There's the extrude, there's inset, bevel, loop cut, right? But you don't really have bridge here. If you go to edge, you'll see that you will have it here, right? Bridge edge loops. Face mode can have that as well, although it always depends on the context. But remember, you can get many of your tools from these menus up here, but also if you just right-click, right? When you right-click, so not left-click, because that selects and tweaks and moves and all that stuff, but right-click, right mouse button, that brings up your edge context menu, right? And this is great because you have your tools in here that maybe you don't use as much, right? Now, in this case, I kind of want to add the bridge tool to my quick keys, right? So if you want to, remember, if you want to assign a quick key, and this is good for you guys to see again in video form, remember, if you right-click on a tool, say bridge edge loops, if I right-click on it, I can go down to assign shortcut, and I could say, let's do Shift B, because I don't have, Control B is bevel, right? So if you go to bevel here, that's Control B. So Shift B will bridge, right? That's how easy it is to assign a quick key, right? Now the nice thing is for the tools that you're not going to use that much and you don't really need a quick key for, that's what's great about right click, right? Is it has a bunch of tools in here that you could use. But you can also assign a quick key that easily. You just right click on the tool and one of your options is assign shortcut key. And you'll notice if I go to 3 for face mode and I grab some faces on different parts of the model and I right click, you'll see that bridge faces also uses that shift B. So it actually applied that to the bridge tool period, regardless of its faces or edges. So the nice thing is when you add that to one of the bridges, it'll be for bridge faces also. In this case, I don't want to bridge faces, but you can. And the very same rules apply. Now, of course, my tweak tool is still on, right? You can kind of see right here. So if I want, I can hit 1 for vertex, and I can just kind of move this vertex down a little bit. Bring that vertex down a little bit there if I wanted to. So you see how we can kind of just go in here and... Yeah, it's fine. Yep. So basically just kind of just move these around a little bit. Maybe get that shape a little bit better for that kind of opening for the window. And I can go 2 for edge mode if I wanted to. So you can easily remember, keep shaping this just to kind of... And that's one of the great things about this method also is that at the end of the day, you can go back and adjust things, right? You're not stuck with a fixed model, right? These are always editable, so I can always come back in here and make adjustments. I probably want an extra loop cut here. So remember, that's loop cut, right? Alt-C, but it is right there. And remember, your loop cut tool is always working based off of the opposite edge, right? So you see if I'm on this edge, it's going to try to find the opposite. If I'm over this edge, it's going to try to find the opposite that direction. This works super reliably on quads. That's one of the many reasons why we prefer to build with quads, right? Sometimes you're going to sit there and you're going to want to say, hey, it's fine if I have a giant 10-sided polygon right on the corner of a wheel well. That is not good, right? Generally, you want to build most of your mesh with quads, right? If it's kind of a building, you can get away with n-gons a bit more, right? But if it's something that deforms and changes shape like a character creature, if it's something that's got a lot of rounded curvature, even if it's a hard surface like a car, you're really going to want to work with primarily quads. They're kind of like the Goldilocks polygon, right? Even though technically a triangle is a pretty predictable polygon when it comes to deforming, it's actually the most predictable. Things like selecting edge loops and adding edge loops don't work well with it. It's not easy to model with. And n-gons are just unpredictable, right? The more vertices you have on it, the more non-planar you can make the shape, right? Most of you guys remember this. We talked about it earlier. But remember, planar is flat, right? And so non-planar is when you can get vertices to not be on the same plane as the vertices for the rest of the polygon. And that can make the shape do weird stuff. And the more vertices you have, the weirder that shape can become. And you get weird dents, and it deforms weird. And so we really, really prefer quads because they're easy to model with, but they're also still quite predictable like a triangle. N-gons are kind of the worst polygon in most instances. Just a little bit of a reminder about that. Remember, you can just left click and it puts it right in the middle automatically. But if you left click hold, it slides it, right? And then, of course, I can just go back to my tweak tool and I could maybe 1 for vertex, and I can just kind of tweak some of these vertices down. But you see how I kind of added just a little bit here? 2 for edge mode. And one of the things you'll notice is that it's pretty easy to just come in here and switch to your different selection types, right? So I'm just going from 2 to 3 to 1, and your tweak tool will stay on. So it's quite easy to turn those all on. In fact, if you go up to the top here and you hold down shift, you'll notice that you can turn on all 3, and then you kind of have super mode where it'll grab whatever one you want. So there is a multi-select in Blender. You just have to turn these all on. So kind of neat, right? So face select multiple modes, control click, so it's kind of neat. I find that since it's so easy to switch with those great quick keys that I don't really use it that much anymore because it's easy enough for it to just be in one mode and tweak that mode and then hit the quick key for it. But technically there is a multi-select in Blender if you just select all of these up here. And that's just shift left click to turn those other ones on. So kind of neat, kind of neat. Just want to get you guys a little bit more about that, right? But still, we're kind of just bridging and loop cutting to start to connect these up more. Obviously, there needs to be more of a wheel well here as well. So I'm going to go 2 for edge mode. I'm going to select an edge here. And then I could easily, and I think because there's more here, I might just kind of not go all the way up. I'll shift left click on this edge. Remember, shift adds to selections, right? And remember, we have a select menu right here, right? And there is things like select linked, right? And you see I've started assigning my own quick keys to these things, right? Remember, just right click, you can change shortcut. If you haven't assigned one at all, it'll say assign shortcut. You click on it, and it's that easy. It'll just, at that point, it says, we'll type in your quick key, right? And it can be modifiers too, so it can be shift, right? And remember, that shortest path really just selects kind of the stuff in between it, right? Now, if it's a very large section in there, sometimes it will find an actual shorter way. So you do have to be a little bit careful. Sometimes it won't do it exactly the way you want to. So I just kind of usually do it in smaller chunks and keep having it do it. In this case, I want to hit Control E for extrude. And we'll just do middle mouse button to extrude this back in to start to create a little more of this wheel well there. Of course, you can use the regular move tools, right? W for move. Use the middle mouse button there. If I want, I can go back to tweak, right? It's kind of up to you on if you want to use that or not. I can go to vertex mode if I want to. And in fact, if maybe we wanted this to kind of taper into here, one of the things you could do is if I select this first, and then I shift click, because I'm in vertex mode, right? 1 for vertex. And I shift click on this vertex, I can right click, right? Remember, right click brings up your options for vertices, because we're in vertex mode. And you will see way down towards the bottom there is merge vertices. And what's cool is you'll see that it gives you lots of options. You can merge to the first selected. You can merge to the last, right? That's what at last. You can merge to the center. You can merge to at cursor. So I'm going to do at last, so it'll merge kind of to that one. And that just kind of, allows that to kind of connect up there a little bit. If need be, we can always delete that and rework it later on. And in this case, I kind of maybe wanted to do a little bit more of something dynamic with those, but I think for right now, I'll just do a little more here. So I'm going to do 2 for edge mode. Grab those 2 edges. Shortest path, right? Select shortest path. I just use my quick key for it. And I might do another Control E for another little extrusion in there. And if need be, I can always tweak it, right? So see, I can kind of go in here and I can tweak these shapes a little bit just to kind of fit more to maybe where I wanted them. And at this point, I could start to bridge these together if I wanted to, right? And I could select these 2 and these 2. Remember, Shift adds to selection, right? And Shift also subtracts, right? You'll notice Shift subtracts. And then, of course, I could bridge, right-click. In this case, I've got it set to a quick key now, Shift-B, bridge edge loops. And that starts to connect those up. So you'll start to notice that we can build up whatever shape we really want to with this, right? Now I'm going to keep doing some more stuff. We'll get some more interesting stuff going on the door later this week. In fact, it might even be kind of cool to maybe start to bring this in here a little bit. So I'll select that edge. Control E for extrude. I can bring this out a little bit. The shape sometimes gets a bit thin, right? So you just go to 1 for vertex mode. Switch back to your tweak tool if you want, or move. It's up to you what you want to use. And I can easily adjust that shape a bit, right? 2 for edge mode. And I can just keep extruding this. If it's a little fat, R for scale, scale it in a little bit, right? E for rotate. Remember, your middle mouse button will do view rotate. And for R for scale, it'll do uniform scale, right? It'll scale all 3 at the same time. Then I can do Control E, bring this up a little bit. Maybe rotate that a little bit as well. Maybe R for scale. Yeah. Right there. Pass. And in this case, maybe I could just do like a quick Alt-C right here. Remember, Alt-C is your loop cut, right? So I can just kind of left-click drag to put some edge loops in there. It's right there, though. Right? Loop cut, Alt-C. And then I can just, of course, go back to my tweak tool or selection tool. And I can select those, and we could bridge those. Shift-B. And you notice how we can start to build whatever weird shapes we want to build in here to create interesting door paneling shapes, right? So you notice how we're not following exactly a strict rigid shape here. this is one of the things that's really cool, and it's a little bit off right now because we still have to do more shaping to it, connect up some other parts. But you see how you can start to get that really neat paneling that you'd start to expect on a really cool sports car, right? So this is one of the things that I also wanted to get through to you guys today a little bit, is that it's pretty easy as you go along to just add edge loops just when you need them. And because we're extruding and bridging border edges, the bridging allows you to connect up the panels, but also it allows you to kind of build the panels. And in this case, you see how it's kind of following this interesting shape, right? It's not exactly a box shape. It's kind of following the contour or panel I want to make. So what's kind of really awesome about this method is it gives you the ability to design and build as you're going instead of trying to trace, but it's also really fast, flexible, and easy. But also, much like you would if you're spline modeling this, you're able to kind of build the paneling to have exactly the shape you want to, right? You're not trying to force a box into this, right? You're kind of building exactly the kind of paneling shape you want to, right? And so these should really follow the kind of shapes that are created by the actual design of whatever vehicle it is. So you can see we can get some pretty creative, cool stuff going on here as we build this vehicle up, right? And some of this might pinch a little weird until we have it more filled in. That's okay. But kind of a cool method, not a cool method, it is a pretty great method for building cars, spaceships, even parts of armor for characters that don't stick to the surface, right? Because we have retopo tools that can allow us to do that. But many parts of armor will actually come off of a character and have weird designs and forms, and you can use this method there, right? So this is a super versatile, fast, excellent, easy, great method that I use all the time for building all kinds of different stuff. All right. I think that'll be a great place to stop recording that.